So we're going to jump into recommendations. We'll go through kind of the history of the growth of the district. We'll go through the process. We'll go through every recommendation, and then what the follow-up steps will be to engage the community. And we've already started hearing from many of you, so thank you for that already. Starting off, I want everybody to see, because we have a lot of people that haven't been in the district for 20 years. And I know that because your houses weren't here before. So if you look back in 2000, we were only about 5,000 students, a little over 5,000 students in 2000, about 1 million square feet of educational space or total space footprint for the district. And then you can see the schools there. Flash forward to 2020 or 2021, and we're 20,000 students more. We added about 4.5 million square feet of educational space. And we've multiplied our schools, obviously. We're now, instead of 1 high school, we got 4 high schools. Before we were intermediate and middle, now we're 6 middle schools, 19 elementary schools. The 20th, Berkshire, is opening up this next year. So just a lot of growth, and just kind of 2 maps that, I know this one's a little old, but it was taken back in 2000, so that's why it's old. But you can see the difference between the schools and the campuses as they exist as we've grown. I want to show you a couple aerials too, just to kind of reemphasize that point. This is an aerial in the southern portion of the district, so you see the blue lines kind of highlighting the high school feeder areas. You can see 287 and 35 and the tip of Alliance here. This is 2001, when we only had about those 6,000 students. And you can see there's not a lot of development. And if we flash forward here to last year, 2020, look at all that growth that comes in and all those housing and roads and development, commercial development coming into that area. It's just remarkable to see that happen over 20 years. We go to the east side of the district, another place that's grown really fast in the last 20 years for us. Again, Roanoke Trophy Club. You can now see all of Alliance Airport. You can see Texas Motor Speedway. Again, 2001, this is when that aerial was taken. And if we hit the button and flash forward to 2020, again, you see all that commercial development, that residential development coming in. And so the last thing I just want to show you is the overall snapshot of the district. And of course, this is the existing boundaries for the high school. I know you can't see the detail here, but one of the things that's important to know is, again, this is when we had about 6,000 students, so there wasn't a lot of housing developments out there. And look at what we're tracking today. This is as of this week. That's 91, a little over 90 different housing developments that we're tracking as far as 2021. And there's actually 1 or 2 that came online in the last couple of weeks that we don't even have on the map yet. So we're working through that. Now, some of these, especially over in Trophy Club, they're starting to build out, and once they're completely built out, we roll them off the map. And this is actually doubled, I think, in the time that since you got here, Dr. Warren. I think when Dr. Warren got here, he was about 43, 45, and now we're pushing 90 plus development. So really a big challenge for us. I know it's a challenge for you as a parent with kids and trying to get them to get to the school that you want to go to. Unfortunately, as fast growth districts, that just sometimes has to be changed to help with the growth that we're dealing with. Here's the attendance boundary process. This is the process we're going through. Just kind of walk through this with you. One thing I want to note before we even get into this is the 2 key elements that any school district has to provide. I mean, the most critical things that we provide as a school district is we have to keep our kids safe, first and foremost, and in this year of COVID, and quarantine and pandemic and all that obviously rings true. And then we have to educate the kids. And so those 2 things have to be taken into account, that if you're in an overcrowded environment, it's more difficult to do those things to the level and to the level of excellence that Dr. Warren always talks about, to that level of excellence if you're in an overcrowded environment. So that's the 2 major overriding things that we talk about here, is keep them safe and make sure they're getting educated properly. So we go through this process of reviewing our statistics, our future projections. We're a school district that has a demographer that's a vendor for us, comes on board and does quarterly updates with the board. Those are on the website. You can go back. Usually we keep about 4 or 5 years at a time. You can go back and see that growth as it's being projected. So we look at those projections. We spend a lot of time with Templeton demographics, going through that, especially in the fall as we prepare for a year where we have to change boundaries, which usually happens about every year. Every now and then, like last year, we have to skip a year. But about every year, we're having to go through this. Here's the strategies, and these strategies have been developed by using outreach to the community, getting that feedback, and we've done this several times over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, and every time these are the main points that come up that everybody wants us to emphasize is prevent that campus overcrowding, to make sure that we're minimizing the impact of future boundary changes, as well as that impact on those students. Obviously, you don't want to move a student and have to move them back. Sometimes that happens. And then maintain student-teacher ratios, keep those class sizes appropriate, and improve the efficiency of the schools, how well we operate as a balanced school district in those scenarios. We then met with district leadership. We had a committee of probably, I think it was about 15 folks, curriculum folks, data services folks, technology, transportation, looking at all the angles to see what are the best options out there. That we then go to the school principals, those campus principals that are either losing students or potentially gaining students one way or the other, depending on how the board votes on it. So we engage them, we go through that discussion. And ultimately what we did this past Monday night, and we take that recommendation to the board for their consideration. And so you see that there. And now we're to that engagement piece. And so this is the engagement communication piece. The Facebook Live, of course, that's happening tonight. And then you see we got some campus videos. Leslie and her crew are working with communications at every campus level to roll those communications out at the campus-based level. Social media will be active during this time, newsletters, the website, and all this going, everything you see coming out will be asking you to give that feedback to onthegrow@nisdtx.org. So that's kind of our catch email to make sure we gather all that feedback. We want to make sure we have that feedback to take to the board, to cycle through it and get it to the board so they can review it as well as they make these decisions. And then ultimately take it to the Board of Trustees to vote, to establish those boundary lines. We hope to do that on the 22nd of February. We'll take it to the board and they'll decide whether or not that's an appropriate time to do that or not. Really, we try to get that done before we get to spring break, regardless, because there's a lot of people trying to get their schedules, especially at that secondary level. If you're a fifth grader going into middle school or even a middle schooler going into high school, you need to kind of know which school you're going to be at. So we want to make sure we do that in enough time so that everybody can adjust their schedule making properly. We're going to jump over to the west side of the district, kind of northwest side of the district, and look at an area up here with Prairie View and Justin. Of course, that area and the Justin area is experiencing some growth right now. Justin and Northlake is another one of our hot spots. That's one of those areas that really in the last several years has really started catching a lot of growth and coming in very fast. So looking at Justin and Prairie View are both 650 campuses of ours, so we'll need to get those. We'll get those up eventually to 850 campuses. That's really where our model is 850 as we've grown over the last 2 decades. 850 is the right model for the district. So we have some older facilities that at some point we start adding on, and we'll add classroom wings and make those 850 capacities. But for now, they're 650, and you can see Justin's already pushing the border there. They'll be about 642 next year. And they continue to grow because of that growth coming on that north end of Justin as well as into pushing into that Northlake area. So here we've talked about taking this area on the far west edge of Justin's feeder pattern and rolling it down into the Prairie View feeder pattern and providing a little balance there. It only gives them, it gets everybody about 3 years, 3 or 4 years, and then that's probably when we're going to be talking about what do we do with making some additions. That could be in a future bond program where we talk about how do we rectify that situation. Now, I will say we already have an elementary school that's going to need to be opening up in that northern area because of Justin and because of Lance Thompson Elementary School. Those are going to reach capacity in the next 3 years. And so we already have a plan to put another elementary school up there that will help provide some of that relief. So it's kind of this ebb and flow process that we go through. You kind of, school builds up, you open a school, you let it release and lower that capacity back down, and then it builds up again. And that's kind of that accordion style that we've been dealing with as a district for about 20 years. So there's the Prairie View piece. There's the aerial again. You can see the different communities that are listed there. See Prairie View down here right next to Chisholm. That's important. We're going to move into Chisholm now, and it's important to note that those two schools are located right next to each other. As we go over here and look at some things we're looking to do for Chisholm. We'll go here, look at that top piece again that we just pulled off of Justin to go to Prairie View. We want to do the same thing for Pike. Okay, Pike is obviously getting to a point where it's going to be at capacity. It's really right there starting next year. 1,100 students that's starting to go over. And Pike is really pulling all that growth from the Justin North Lake area. And so you see that trend getting up here at almost 2,000 students in the next 10 years. So a lot of rapid growth there. Not to be outdone in the south by Adams, who's also getting up here to about 2,000 students in the next 10 years. So there's two hotbeds in the district right now along the 287 corridor and along the northern I-35 and up around 407 corridor. And then the other piece is 114, and we're about to see that become kind of a third hotbed for us. If you've driven down 114 lately, you can see there's a lot of development that's very early on that is major housing homes. I mean, we're talking housing developments of 3,000 plus homes. Some in the 1,000 to 2,000, some at 3,000. And so there's a big growth that's going to happen along that 114 border. So we talked about this group that we moved from Justin down to Prairie View in a sense that we want to make sure that we're not to take the middle schoolers with them. So if you're a family that has both elementary and a middle school child, you're not going one side of the district, Justin, to pick up your elementary student and then going to Chisholm to pick up your middle school student. And so we are going to Prairie View to get your student and then running over here to Pike. So putting that feeder where they're side by side, we think is a good thing for families to be able to help them out as they're dealing with their kids in different school levels. So you can see what the numbers do there. The other piece to note, we're trying to grab some of this land and take it to Chisholm that I talked about on 114 before the homes get there. We did that with this piece on the south 2 years ago because we knew there was development coming. Now we've got a lot of development coming in on the north, and so we've making that recommendation to take it to Chisholm as well, just so it'll pick back up. I will say I think these numbers are conservative for Chisholm. I actually think that growth along 114, we are starting to see our numbers really expand. The fourth quarter demographic report will be out at the next board meeting, and I will tell you we've topped the most home builds in a single quarter than the district's ever done before, and not by a little, by a lot. So we're seeing a huge growth. Of course, the interest rates are helping that, and people are wanting to move to this area, and the home builders know it, and they're out there building homes as fast as they can. So I think you're going to see this number at Chisholm really start to spike a lot sooner when all that stuff along 114 gets put into place. So there's the moves for Chisholm. The last one that we have on here is this little fin, this little tail down here at the bottom that comes down towards the 287 area. That group right now is what I referred to earlier as that split feeder pattern. And so as we got together as a committee and administrators trying to do what's best for kids, so you got a group here that goes to Seven Hills, and then 90% or so of Seven Hills, when they move up to middle school, they go over to Chisholm, and this small 5 to 10% comes down to Adams. And so one of the things we said was maybe we should make that a true feeder pattern, and so that was one of the recommendations is to bring them in so that they're staying with their classmates as they go from Seven Hills to Chisholm versus splitting off in a small segment to come to Adams, and also provide that harmony and unity as they grow together. So there's the aerial, again showing the aerial there. A little bit bigger maps, hard to label everything as we kind of get out a little bit bigger. But you can see 114 coming along here, 287 that comes up. Rome is here. You can see the school sites. That red star is Seven Hills. The other red star there is Prairie View, and then the green is Chisholm. And this purple is actually a site we own potentially for a high school in the future is what it was bought for. So we'll watch that as that area continues to grow. The other piece that's associated with that is that true feeder pattern we just talked about in that little tail piece there, taking it with the change from Seven Hills to Chisholm to let them continue on to the Northwest High School. So it's a true feeder pattern for those students as they grow up with their classmates, elementary level, transition to middle school, and then transition to high school. And we'll get to this in a minute. I think this is more about trying to make it right for those kids coming up. And I think we've had some serious conversations with curriculum, and we don't want to disrupt those kids that are already at the high school level, or they're in that 8th grade year and they're about to go to the high school level. We don't want to peel them off. So that would be something that the curriculum folks would work with on ability to stay there and transfer and stay at their high school that they're already at. So that's just one of those things. We're just trying to make it right moving ahead. And so there's the piece on the high school there. It's not really about a numbers game, so I didn't show you numbers on that one. Here's some of the recommendations that we try to do annually or every other year or however often we have to do this. One, we don't like to send kids away from their school if it's their last year to be in that campus. So if this is your 4th grade year and you were going to be a 5th grader at whatever school, Cox Elementary School next year, we would ask the board to let's let those kids be eligible to remain their last year. Same thing for your the students who would be an 8th grader in their middle school the following year. And then the same thing I said for the high school, we did a little bit different this year because we only have one segment of high school, and we said, let's keep all them together to remain, including those 8th graders that are about to transition in. We don't want them to lose that friend group and be a small segment that gets splintered off. So that was the discussions there around keeping students there if it's their last year. Now the flip side of that and the challenge with that is it comes at a cost of we can't provide bus transportation because that's extra routes for 1 or 2 or 3 students that stay versus a full bus load. So that's one of the costs that comes at it. And the other thing is we have to draw the line with those students there. We recommend we draw the line and not say it's a full family because that could be generation. I mean, it could be 10 years. You could have siblings that aren't even born yet that still want to try to do that. And so we have to really try to draw that line there with those existing students that would be in that scenario. So here's our next steps. Again, Facebook Live, here we are tonight in front of you giving you this information. The campus videos we talked about, if you're in one of those affected areas, whether you're in an area that's staying, but another part of your boundary is moving out, or you're in an area that you're receiving that part of the boundary, we're working with those principals to send out campus level communication. And our communications department is all over that. Get the maps, get you some videos. I think we're going to try to chop up this video so you can go back and watch it, and you don't have to watch the whole thing. You can watch what's specific to your campus. And so we're going to get that to you through the campus levels. We're going to put a lot of social media posts and website newsletter information out there for you. Everything we send out is going to have that link for On the Grow at nisdtx.org. We want to make sure that we're capturing your feedback there and bringing that back so that we can get that to the board again if they choose. They're going to see it again on February 22nd, and if they choose to vote at that time, then we'll know where our fate lies for those boundaries.